All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to our Knowledge at Noon for today, April 27th. And today we have Clint Parry from Focus HR. He's the Development Director from Focus HR. And the topic is, as you can see, you've weathered the storm, prepare for the aftershock. Go ahead, Clint. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us today on a fine Monday at noon. We're really excited to share with you some new insights and perspectives on some of the unexpected challenges that business owners are going to face as the economy reopens, and then share with you some of our ideas and strategies for how to confront these challenges so that you can head on, so that you and your business can hopefully prepare and build up some momentum and hit the ground running fast as we fully kind of get back into business. I'm going to save some time at the end for Q&A, so please use your chat function. Just feel free to type in a question. We'll have a fair, I think, number of folks on the line, so we'll do our best to address all the questions that we get to. And if we do run out of time, then I'll leave my contact information there at the end, so that you can feel free to reach out to our office if we can help you. Just a reminder to mute your line, so we help cut down any background noise. Looks like most people are doing that, so we'll really appreciate that. I'm also fortunate to have our COO, Greg Stutz, and our Director of HR, Sue Foster, on the line as well. I'm going to take us through the content first, and then I'll invite Greg and Sue in during our Q&A period at the end. So with that, just let me give you a brief background on us, three of us. Sue Foster, she leads our HR team here at Focus HR. She's got about 30 years of experience in all things HR. She's worked for companies ranging from 10 employees to 250,000 employees, both in senior HR management roles and operational roles. So she's developed a pretty strong breadth of HR, both in terms of employee relations, employee engagement, and of course on the legal compliance side of things. Greg Stutz is our COO here at Focus HR, where he's got over 10 years. For 10 years, he's worked to build Focus HR into one of the leading HR outsourcing firms in the Southwest. Greg has got a pretty strong acumen in accounting and operations, and certainly in HR disciplines as well, and is intimately involved in all things HR here at Focus HR, as well as employee benefits, workers' compensation, risk, safety, and payroll. And I'm Clint Parry. I'm your presenter. My background, at least over the last 25 years, is kind of a combination of sales and marketing, coaching small business owners, leadership development strategy for large companies. And then for the recent last year, a little over a year, I've joined in the HR outsourcing business with Focus HR. I love working for Focus HR, an amazing company. And my real passion is helping small business owners accelerate their growth and prosperity through building more agile and resilient businesses. Just so for those of you who aren't familiar with Focus HR and who we are, we work with small business owners in the areas of HR, people stuff, workers' compensation, employee benefits, risk and safety, and payroll. Our goal is pretty simple. We just try to help business owners lower their labor costs and reduce their employee-related liability by sort of liberating them of all the transactional HR stuff that just gets in the way and creates friction in their business. We've been in business about 17 years here in Southern Arizona, based here in Tucson. We're locally owned, women-owned, and a little over 400 client companies that we do business with. So let me jump into the agenda, what we're going to cover for our time today. Three main topics that I want to cover. Mostly want to spend most of our time looking forward and not so much backward. But I want to talk about what the storm that we sort of just experienced, sort of the aftershock that we believe is coming, and then the recovery stage and how we can focus in preparing our businesses for that stage. Okay, so let's jump in. So many of you might be like me asking, what just happened? This kind of almost feels, sometimes I keep thinking there's in this twilight zone, and you just keep waking up and saying, wow, what was this all about? And how did this happen? But nonetheless, COVID-19 for all of us, I think has been certainly a catalyst for economic upheaval, the likes of which we've never really seen before. Certainly in speed and impact. It's really a shock to the system. Kind of liken it to like a personal health crisis for maybe you or maybe some of those that close family and friends have experienced a heart attack or diabetes or had some sort of big life health event. And that came as a real shock to the system and probably required a lot of change in both behavior, diet, exercise, reducing stress, just some fundamental things that had to change if you're assuming you survive that. And I think with businesses, COVID also was a shock to the system and really sort of created a business health crisis as well, where they were forced, and businesses have been forced to make changes, significant changes in a very short period of time. I think some of those changes are going to be very good for the long run as we think about it. And if you're like so many of our clients, it's been regulatory overwhelm. It came at us fast and furious. All the things that happened, if you're like our clients, it really created an HR nightmare for small businesses have never experienced before. Really did push us out of our comfort zones, in a big way. In fact, I was talking to a dental office last week, and maybe some of you have had this similar experience. They thought they had a good handle on things, but then made some decisions, and some of those decisions they made ultimately one decision led to another decision and sort of triggered some issues and really opened up a can of worms for them. The word she used was engulfed. She just felt engulfed in how do you deal with all of this stuff? They're just really trying to figure it out on their own. And it's tough. And I'll be honest, even with our own company, for a couple of weeks there, it felt like we were like a crisis management center. We were just fielding hundreds of phone calls from clients and working with them to try to help them make sense of this new legislation, navigating the storm, and also trying to help them quickly turn around their reports and payroll packets so they could apply for their PPP loans. But the bottom line is business owners were forced to make some very big and difficult decisions in a very short period of time with information that just seemed to just keep changing almost on a daily basis, and they had to make tough decisions whether to lay off, whether to furlough, whether to cut back hours or wages, whatever it was. But like any crisis, it exposed some cracks and some weak areas, I think, in businesses that they need to be addressed. But for me, it also revealed the strength and the tenacity and the resiliency of the human spirit and the toughness that small business owners and their teams have, and that never ceases to inspire me. And so while there are a lot of lessons that need to be learned from this time period, if business owners are open to that learning and will embrace the change, I'm convinced that we're going to come out much stronger, and business owners are coming out much stronger on the other end. Now that said, I wish I could say we were over the hump, but unfortunately we have a next wave, or what I'm calling an aftershock, that is coming our way that I think we need to prepare for. And frankly, I don't think most business owners are quite prepared for. So let me give you a peek into some insight into what that aftershock looks like, and then give you a peek into some of our conversations that we're having with clients to help them prepare for this aftershock and build some momentum so they hit the ground running as the economy reopens. Now, I'm going to address the impact both of the aftershock, both from an employee perspective as well as a customer perspective. Can I help you think about that? So first, in terms of the employee front, look, this was a life-changing event. And with any kind of life-changing event, whether it's marriage, divorce, birth, death, it brings with it some time to think and time to reflect. It gives us sort of a pause to ask, what does this all mean for me in my life? Employees are likely going to be in a very different kind of frame of mind, both now that may still be working, but also those that may come back from being laid off, et cetera. For example, they may choose to work for another company or just switch careers altogether, or they may decide, I'm ready to pursue an advanced degree. For some employees, they've decided that, hey, they can make more money on state unemployment. So they're just going to use their time while they're on unemployment to look elsewhere, look for a different opportunity. For those, some of you may have employed college age students in part-time jobs, and they've likely relocated or fled the area. So there's more pressure for you to find replacement talent. And others, there's a big fear that employees have in coming back to work. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about that you're going to take appropriate prevention and mitigation steps to protect their health. So on the employee relations front, you're going to probably see some challenges, likely challenges, as you bring back those that have been laid off. And you may witness some new dynamics emerge and need to make some cultural adjustments in the workplace. For example, if you've had some key talent that you've kept, or sort of a skeleton crew that you've kept working during the time period, this can produce kind of what we're calling sort of like a pseudo manager, where they feel that now they own certain roles and responsibilities because they've taken on extra workload. Maybe they've changed some systems, they've changed processes and kind of ways of doing things. And then as employees return that have been laid off or furloughed, these pseudo managers may take on an attitude of, hey, we did fine without you, or we're actually doing better without you. There may be also some other dynamics that pop up as well that are sort of maybe tough to predict, but the message is really here is be prepared and make sure that you're tuned in to some of the new cultural and social dynamics that are going to be among and between your employees. This will also be a key opportunity for you and your business to reiterate some of the values and culture and principles that really drive the culture of your business and sort of the way we do things around here. So just be mindful of that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about just briefly touch on the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act. It was FFCRA as we refer to it. Briefly, because right now, a lot of our HR managers are fielding a lot of questions with FFCRA and how to administer all the provisions of this act, which requires certain employers that are under 500 employees to provide their employees with paid sick leave and expanded family and medical leave for specific reasons related to COVID-19. The key is you don't want to mess this up, and you don't want to have an employee file an EEOC claim. So we're not going to spend all the time going through all the elements of the legislation, the details of law, but just a few points that I want to highlight that are significant to remember. First of all is to follow the guidelines and make sure that you request documentation from your employees that request leave so that you have it for future audit purposes. The second, don't deny payment. If it is questionable, then call the EEOC or call the Department of Labor first to just check with them. Third, don't be afraid to question the necessity of employees' requests for leave, but also at the same time, don't retaliate against an employee for using leave. Again, we just recommend if you contact professionals or if you have questions, or reach out to the EEOC or Department of Labor if you have questions on that. Now, on a customer relations perspective point of view, most likely going to be changes. Things are going to be different. I'm not going to begin to guess all of the ways that it will be different and how these changes could manifest, but here are a couple big ones. First of all, customers, we think just won't start flowing in the doors unless you're maybe in an industry that's pent up, has some pent up demand, like you're a hairstylist and everybody's been waiting to get their haircut or something like that. And then you'll probably face a whole different kind of reality trying to handle all of the volume of business and some of the overwhelm that comes with that. But we know that fear drives behavior. And certainly the economic impact from COVID will create uncertainty and will cut discretionary spend, and people will conserve cash. So we also know that there's going to be a fear that will drive behavior in terms of worry and risk around their health. Many people are still going to be afraid to venture out too much. Beyond fear that's impacting their buying habits, I'm sure that fear will drive many other behaviors that we haven't even thought of before. So just be extra attuned into, from a customer perspective, what some of the fears are that your customers might be experiencing. Now, second, on a sales and marketing front, given the times that we're in, your message has to be different than it was yesterday because the mood and the conditions have changed. So it's going to be important that you strike a balance between compassion and empathy with an urgency for how you can help solve real and immediate problems that your products and services can solve for your customers. I don't have the magic potion to help you strike that balance on exactly what it looks like, but just something you'll have to kind of feel out and certainly get some feedback both from your team as well as your customers and how to deal with that. Okay, so let's shift gears now. Let's focus on the future and what I call the recovery. I want to focus on, there are three key themes around what I call the COVID opportunity, around the recovery, that I want to focus on that I think are important for business owners to consider here. And I've kind of bucketed those as connect, lead, and focus. So let's first talk about connect. And I'm going to do a connect in terms of from a relational and an emotional perspective with employees, and then I'm going to talk about connect as it relates to customers. So first, keep in mind that as we have frequent touch that you keep in frequent touch with your employees, certainly the ones that are continuing to work with you, because it's really at this time when you're in a time of crisis, it's hard to over communicate. Employees, I think, are hypersensitive to change, especially now in our world of social media and the 24/7 news cycle. And so in terms of communication, they need frequency, they need transparency, and they need reality. They can take the difficult news and they can adapt. They can't take the sparse, the infrequent, cryptic communication that can lead to hearsay, rumors, mistrust. So our counsel is just be real with them. For those that have been laid off, especially the ones that you want to come back, keeping in frequent communication with them is just as important. They need to feel from you they need to feel some semblance that they're still your employees. So we're recommending to our clients that they give them a weekly update that, hey, we're looking at ways to get you back as soon as possible. Here's what's going on in our business, and here's where we're at. So just frequent touch points to keep them connected in what's going on. Radio silence always sends a clear signal that you're not interested in them. So we just recommend that frequent contact in places while they've been laid off. In terms of physical contact, likely new rules and social norms around us for social distancing and contact with other people, we're going to see those emerge. There's going to be just, frankly, less contact for some time. And as we sort of struggle into what this new norm is going to be like. Things like touching doors and touching restaurant menus, there's going to be things that people don't want to touch as much. So we're also seeing a lot of new legislation around physical contact and such. On the legislation side, it's very fluid. In fact, I was just reading an article over the weekend about new federal guidelines by the EEOC that talked to employers being able to perform COVID-19 tests on their workers in order to screen them before they're putting them back into work, or to determine if they need to remain in the workplace going forward. In addition they need to continue to observe infection control practices such as social distancing, regular hand washing, and other measures in the workplace to prevent transmission of the disease. Another bill that was introduced was going to require employers to implement some precautionary measures that go even beyond what OSHA and U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines now require. There's also some legislation being considered around workers' compensation and its application, which typically has application to employees, but also from a customer side in the workplace, and how that's going to potentially change given COVID and all the impacts to the workplace. The bottom line here, I guess I'm trying to share, is that things are going to continue to be very dynamic and changing on the regulatory front. So it's important that you as business owners stay on top of this stuff so that you don't open yourself up to greater liability. So the idea also of less physical contact, I think, is going to transcend in the way we work in terms of our workspaces. I was just reading an article over the weekend from commercial real estate brokers that on how they expect to see some pretty big changes, both in the retail and office space sectors as a result of COVID. So the way we work, the way we connect and interact with employees may be very different in how workspaces are configured. Ultimately, the psyche of your customers and how they buy from you is going to change. So it's going to be important for business owners as well to understand what's important with your customers, what's okay with them and what's not okay with them. We've also heard, actually heard some businesses that are selling automatic doors and restaurants that are looking at virtual menus. And if the customer walks in, they scan it with a barcode and pull it up on their mobile device. But there's just going to be, beyond some of these new social norms and rules at play, we're advocating is that you need to stay also and establish this frequency of communication with your customers. We need to really redouble our efforts to in that category, not necessarily in a sales way, but just, how are you infusing more empathy and more compassion in your messaging with your customers? How are you providing additional help or education to them that can be meaningful to them? We still, of course, need to stay in business. We still need to sell, but we have to be mindful of the approach that we take. And that it's the approach that we take is building connection with them. First, building connection, because simply put, you've probably heard the good old adage that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So just make sure that your messaging reflects that. The more connected, though, that you stay with your customers, the more loyal, of course, they're going to be on the other side of this. Okay, let's talk about lead now. And a few things I want to talk about in terms of lead and really the idea around leadership. You've probably seen and you've read a lot on the topic of leadership lately, and we could spend hours and many webinars talking about leadership in these times and leadership in tough times. I just want to touch on a few key ideas around leadership that I think are crucial, especially as we go into the recovery time period, and especially now, some of the things you're facing now that you need to lead through. So first, let's talk about Payroll Protection Program, or as we, of course, refer to as the PPP. Some of you have received your Payroll Protection Program funds that will cover you for the next 8 weeks. Others will hopefully get a second chance at that in the coming days. And then, of course, I realize that some of you may not receive those funds at all. Regardless, so what's really important here is that you understand the intent of the PPP and how to lead that narrative around it and leverage the program to your fullest advantage. So really the intent of the program is to help you keep paying all of your employees that are at regular pay. So at least 75% of the loan proceeds must be applied to cover your payroll costs in order to maximize the loan forgiveness. I won't get into the details of how that's all calculated, but if you have questions, you can reach out to us or your CPA. I'm sure they can help you. But there are a few things to just keep in mind with the program. First, many of your employees are aware of the program. So we recommend that you keep your employees informed, keep them in the loop. Hey, did we get the money or not? And if we did, what does that mean for us? If we didn't, what does that mean for us? And second, if you do receive it, you and your team have got to realize that this is temporary. This is an 8-week Band-Aid effectively. It's not a permanent solution. So just be transparent around that and avoid any false pretense with your team members on that. The third area is you might want to think about here with the program is just to leverage the loan forgiveness provisions as much as possible. When you keep your employees on payroll, they're your employees. You keep them engaged, doing productive things that are going to be helpful for your business. We definitely feel this is better than the alternative of them just staying home and collecting unemployment when they're really not your employees, and that also gives them time to explore other job and career options. A fourth, so much of HR is just it's a state of mind. And when employees are working and fully engaged, they're more likely to contribute in productive ways that impact the bottom line. So leverage the PPP program if you've got it to your advantage. Now, again, we realize that when with all the employees, as employees come back, you might not have customers there to serve them. In other words, if you're still closed as a business, or if you've seen a significant drop off in your business. So you're thinking about, well, how am I going to keep them all busy and engaged and productive? But that's super important. So this may be an ideal opportunity, a time period for you to work on the business, meaning you think about those non-urgent but very important projects, initiatives, strategies, et cetera, that you've maybe placed on the back burner. Now is a good time, and while you've got the time and the resources to tackle those over the next 8 weeks. It's also time perhaps to focus on re-engineering the business in ways that can really help you prepare for whatever our new normal is going to look like. So create some project teams, really engage your team members, your employees around with a sense of purpose and inspire them to around some innovative thinking and to find better ways that you can serve your customers and grow the business. All right, so the next area I want to talk about in terms of lead is valuing employees. And when we talk about leading, we're certainly talking about ways that we can help your employees feel more valued. We've already talked about some of the new cultural and social norms that are going to change. But one question that's likely on your employees' mind, and an area that we've been talking, having a lot of conversations with our clients on, is how are you going to protect me? So employers have got to address this. Your employees have valid fears and health concerns around COVID-19, and your employees need to know how much you care, genuinely care about them, because of that, what steps you're going to take to mitigate some of the fears and worries that they may have around COVID. Now, like anything, employees will know whether the actions that you take out of genuine concern for them are genuine indeed, or are you just sort of, they'll know if you're just trying to cover your backside. So all I want to mention here is that while we're on the topic, is that we're in a tight labor market for good employees. That hasn't changed. Employees are still looking for the best talent out there. We've heard some employers are still under the illusion that they'll suddenly find this good pool or inventory of good employees out there. That may likely not be the case, because if employers were wise, they've kept their best people on staff, found some way to ensure that also that they're valued and engaged. So the good ones will be recruited away very quickly if they, for some reason, don't feel valued or don't feel that they can make a meaningful contribution. So just remember, keep your good employees, and for those, just know that we don't believe there's going to be this significant increase in good talent out there. Also, with your employees, get creative during this time of physical separation, and consider some ways that you can keep the team feeling engaged and valued, and infuse some fun in things. I read a great example of this. There was a startup company. They created this stay-at-home bingo game that for their employees to play, that I thought was kind of clever. That same company also realized, and they're still in hiring mode, so they realized how intimidating it can be to join a business during a pandemic, and where you can't see really or meet other employees or your manager. So together, the team innovated. They created a game board, a game for their onboarding, for their new employee orientation that their new employees will go through on their first day of orientation. So I thought that was pretty cool, just being creative again. Another area that I want to really focus on when it comes to lead or leadership is empathy. If there's one leadership trait that's really emerged during this critical time period, this time of crisis, it's empathy. The human side of business has really come out now more than ever. Normally, there's more separation between the personal and business side of things, but with COVID, sort of those two worlds have collided in a big way, and that's created some vulnerability as our home life has been on much bigger display and become more intertwined with work life. So as business owners, it's really important that you amp up the empathy and the compassion to a much greater degree. So, here's a simple fact. The greater level that you have of empathy, the more that people are going to trust you, and the more that they're going to feel that you genuinely have their best interest at heart. The greater level, and the greater level that they'll have of engagement and commitment and trust that you're going to get from them. And as a result, the more solutions and the more resources and ideas they're going to provide and contribute to your business to help save your business and grow. Just feeling that empathy and trust. And I saw this interesting article. It was about Jacinda Ardern. I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name, but she's a 39-year-old prime minister from New Zealand. The article spoke about her relationship, or about her leadership style of empathy, and how her messages are clear, they're consistent, and yet somehow simultaneously they're sobering and soothing. It also talked about how she's created this feeling that she's not preaching to them, but she's actually standing with them. I thought that was pretty interesting. In fact, in the article, one of the former prime ministers for New Zealand commented, she says that they may even think, well, I don't understand why the government did that, but I feel she's got our back. There's this high level of trust and confidence in her because of her empathy. So you can never have enough empathy. It's just a critical leadership characteristic and trait to develop during this time. Okay, next area I want to focus, key area I want to focus on, really the third and final big idea I want to focus on is focus. Now more than ever, the future viability and the potential prosperity of your business is at stake. Now, your business needs laser focus from you and your team. So there are a few key areas that I think are essential that I want to talk about when it comes to focus. The first is the financial side. Now, I'm going to talk more in terms of financials. I'm going to focus more on the HR from an HR lens as we talk about this. So it's no surprise, the businesses need to proactively match revenues and expenses to avoid becoming insolvent. So this can be, of course, tough in these difficult times because you all have big hearts and you care about your employees and their families. There's a business that goes out of business because of excessive labor costs doesn't help or serve anyone. It hurts more people in the process, employees and customers alike. So just be mindful that you're not letting your payroll costs spiral too far out of whack relative to revenues, especially in this time period. And if you don't get your PPP money, that's even, of course, even more important. But cash flow projections and planning are super important in this area. So you need to be looking ahead and cutting your payroll costs now, not when all of a sudden you see your payroll bill show up. Look, frankly, if you have to lay off employees, that's why we have the state unemployment system, and they are getting additional funds as part of legislation. So I guess the message here is just be careful as you're making decisions. Don't make them on emotions, but just be mindful of your financial situation. Second area I want to talk about is innovation and disruption. So when you think about this, think about what we would have never done, but now that we've been forced to do it, how we've adapted. We call this forced disruption. We've been shoved literally out of our comfort zones and forced to innovate and do things differently. So how can you, moving forward, disrupt your business before it gets disrupted? This is an optimal time to for you to completely rethink and reimagine your business. So digital and virtual have to become key elements of your business model moving forward. So this is a time to focus in on further integrating technology into your business and reimagining sort of new and efficient ways that business can get done. Now, look, human interaction and connection isn't going away, but it will change, and it's going to have to adapt as we look ahead and at the changes that are coming. Next area I want to talk about is sort of a CEO that I used to work with, and he commented once and said, I think something very profound. He said, do what you do best all the time and do what you don't do best none of the time. Now, especially during this time of rethinking and reimagining, business growth needs your complete and full attention. So think about the areas in your business that aren't what you do best. Think about some certain creative tasks or things that just create friction in your business or frustration that slow its growth and just cause all sorts of issues, frustration with you. And the things also that don't contribute a dime of revenue to your business. And many of these things can be outsourced to professionals like accounting, bookkeeping, technology, HR. The key message here that I want to talk about and really emphasize is here's agility. Agility is that ability to flex quickly up and down with speed as economic or other conditions change. And it's so crucial for business owners today that you have agility in your business. The more that you can infuse build agility into your business model, the more quickly that you can adapt to conditions now that will come in the future. All right, and the last area I want to talk about in terms of focus is your grand reopening. Now, at some point, we're gonna reopen. And so how do you do it in a way that you don't get caught flat-footed? So given what we've talked about in terms of innovation and reinventing your business, this is a great time to plan your grand reopening, the relaunch of the business. Think back to the first time when you opened your business and what that felt like. So it's time to be loud and proud about relaunching your business. So think about, how will you communicate your grand reopening? Get your team excited. I'm sure the news media is going to be hungry to do stories on those that have survived this thing. So you maybe have some opportunities to gain there. Also, how are you going to be ready when the doors open? Is your team going to be ready? Are they going to be engaged? Is there pent-up demand for your products and services? And if so, do you have sufficient stock in place? Are there things that your suppliers or vendors potentially could run out of? So just think ahead about those things and plan. So I hope that what we covered today will not only give you some immediate and important things to consider on the employee and customer front as the economy reopens, but I hope it's provoked some new level of thinking and ideas for you and how your team can respond. So with that, I want to jump into, I've been so in the moment, didn't cover some of these slides. So with that, I want to jump into questions and Q&A. I'd also like to invite Greg Stutz and Sue Foster, our CEO and our Director of HR, to unmute and join us to help address the questions that come up. So again, if you have a question, just feel free to type it in the chat function, and I will try to get to all of the questions as possible. Again, if we don't get to your question, feel free to reach out to our office and we'll try to help you get squared away. So with that, let's go into our chat room here. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in or ask questions. We'll try to address it as best we can. Okay. So let's see some questions. I think I'm not seeing any questions as right now, unless my chat box is empty.
No, I'm not seeing any either, Clint.
Okay, great. We'll just leave another few seconds. If you have a question, again, just type it in and we'll try to address it as best as possible. Otherwise, we will wrap up.
Hey, Clint, this is Sue. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sue.
There is one answer that I want to give you folks that not everybody probably has a question now, but you're going to get it, or you're going to have it later on. I don't know if there's a whole lot of business owners on here or office folks or HR folks. However, please note that if your employees, you recall your employees and they want to come back to work, or you want to have your PPP money and they come back to work, and then they say, no, I'm making more money on unemployment, I don't want to come back. The unemployment, DES has informed us that when that happens, that you're required to write a letter to DES letting them know the name and the social security number of the person that you recalled them from furlough or from layoff, and the date that they were supposed to return to work and that they denied it. Now, while we don't really want to do that, these people are going to get caught. So we don't want to be mean, but we do need to we as employers have to get the people back to work, and it's going to be a big deal because people can make a lot of money on unemployment right now.
Good point. Thanks, Sue. I did also get I just had a question that came in. how are employers, and I'll toss this out to Greg or Sue, either one of you can address it. How are employers going to address COVID testing before returning to work after the stay at home and ongoing? EEO says that this won't be a violation of ADA.
You're correct. It's not. I was reading that this morning as well. It's not a violation of the ADA to ask that they get tested. However, you can't require them to get tested if they're not allowed to be tested. So it's a very thin line you have to walk. If you're requiring them to get tested, first of all, you need to pay for it. And number two, you need to give them a means to get tested. There's one place here in Tucson right now that's doing drive-through testing. It's over here at Grant and Craycroft, I believe. But if you're going to require it, you need to make sure that they have a means to do it. And yes, you are able to test them.
Great, thanks, Sue. Any other questions popping up? And Greg, is there anything else you wanted to chime in on?
No, that kind of touched on the bulk of it. I mean, obviously the PPP in particular has created a lot of questions, many of which kind of remain unanswered. I mean, I think the things that'll become clear over the coming weeks will be telling on how to deal with this. And I mean, as businesses, we're in a position where our federal government had to rush things through, and there were surely some unintended consequences, as Clint kind of pointed out. I mean, the major one being that many employees can theoretically make more money on unemployment than they would have made at your job or they'll make on your payroll. So that presents a hurdle in bringing them back. But I mean, obviously we all know why things were rushed through, because we needed it. But I mean, I would certainly say stay tuned. I mean, I think there's still some underlying questions regarding the PPP loan, whether it be exactly how the federal government wants us to count full-time equivalent employees, so on and so forth. So anyways, in our world, it seems to be a daily update on direction on how to proceed.
Thanks, Greg. We just had another question that came through. It looks like, Sue, you addressed that about after testing, what if they're positive? So you can see Sue's response there. If they are positive, you can require them to stay at home until they are cleared by a doctor. They are eligible for FFCRA at that point.
Yeah, if you have under 500 employees, they're eligible for FFCRA. If they say they test positive, you can request proof, something from a doctor. You can, tell them they have to stay home for the 14-day incubation period or quarantine period, but you still want to request that they get a doctor's release to return to work, even if it's beyond the 14 days.
Great. Any other final questions before we decide to wrap up here? Okay, well, with that, hey, I just want to thanks to everyone. Really appreciate it. I've got my contact information up here. Feel free to reach out to me in our office if there's some burning question you didn't get answered or just want to talk one-on-one with. Really appreciate that. Thanks for your time today, and I hope everybody has a great day and a great week.
Yeah, I want to thank you,
Joel, or Jason. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to thank you and Greg and Sue for hosting this today. We really do appreciate it. So thank you for taking your time. Hopefully everybody found it informational. I just also wanted to preview for tomorrow. Tomorrow, our topic is going to be Keep Calm and Small Business On. We're going to have Ellen Curtin. She's from the Pima Community College Small Business Development Center. She'll be on tomorrow speaking, giving a presentation on the SBA disaster assistance and response to the coronavirus, obviously. It'll just include tips and updates. So if you haven't registered for that, please go online and do so. And again, thank you everybody for coming and listening to us again today.